trouble.
The water.
Stepped in the water was cool. It chilled my body, but not my soul.
I'm gonna wade in the water. Wade in the water. Children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water.
Okay, thank you guys so much for being here this morning. This is like something we never expected that we would be doing, but here we are. I'm just gonna give you guys a little short story about why we are up here and what it means when we say that we are Black people. And so a couple of weeks ago, we did an intercession. We were actually invited to do an intercession for Black missionaries here at YWAM and all across the globe. Talking to some people who are become like family to us now, and they were like, I was so excited. I was saying, we're gonna go pray for all the Black missionaries. And our good friend was like, can I ask you something? And I was like, yes. He was like, I just wanna understand, if I said I was gonna go pray for white people, you would be offended by that, right? So why is it okay for you to say that you are going to go pray for Black missionaries? And so I said, yes. If you said you were going to pray for white people, I would be like, what are you talking about? Because that's not a people group. If you told me that you were going to go pray for Italians or Irish or Americans or the British or the Angolians, I would be like, yes, let's go pray for them. But to understand what it means to be a Black person is to understand the Middle Passage and to understand a people whose languages, customs, culture, clothing, everything was snatched from them, and they have no trace back of who they actually are, except for that they know they are African. But they're not even African anymore because most of them have never even been there. And so when we say we're going to pray for Black people, we're talking about the diaspora. And we'll get into that, and you'll see how many people that actually is here in America, and how many people that affected during that time when we were no longer Nigerians or Egyptians or South Africans, but we became Black people. This is a quote from W.E.B. Du Bois, who is a prolific intellectual thought leader from the early 1900s in Black America. And he says, one ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body, whose strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. And so when you see us, you do see Americans, and you do see New Yorkers and Philadelphians, but you also see Black people, and you also see Africans.
I'm going to go over a brief timeline because there's so much to unpack, but just some key times and some backstory. So first we have 1619. So Clarissa mentioned what we describe as the Middle Passage. So it's reported, but the numbers skewed, that over 12.5 million Africans were kidnapped and stolen from Africa by 40,000 European ships. Along this route, many didn't make it. People died from diseases. And as you see, I don't know if you can see the details, but those black lines, those are bodies. Those are people who were literally on ships, chained head to foot. Different tribes and languages. They were not able to communicate with each other. Sometimes they were coming up to the top of the ship, and some people, instead of like going to this unknown place, they literally jumped off the ship, and they would rather just jump into the Atlantic and just die. So when we say 12.5 million people were part of slavery, definitely more. So next, we move on to 1787. So 3/5 compromise. What that means is, while most of the nation was celebrating independence, American independence, African Americans in this country were considered 3/5 humans. So during the prayer, River spoke about like being whole. We weren't considered whole. We were considered a partial human. We were considered chattel, basically animals to be owned, and that's during the duration of slavery. Next, we have the Emancipation Proclamation. So this here, declared by Abraham Lincoln, was the initial period where slavery was ended. However, it wasn't accepted throughout the country, hence why we had the Civil War. And so after this, we have the Reconstruction era, which rolled out the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, which in essence partially gave us some rights, but then it moved us into a time where Jim Crow laws and segregation and things like that just prohibited our freedom as black people in this country. And so we did have different periods of we had the Harlem Renaissance, we had the Great Migration, so people moving from the South and the way things were going in the South to the North, and then moving across the country to California, things like that, the way the Middletons did, but in a better sense. Right. And then so you have the Civil Rights Act. And so the Civil Rights Act, most of us know Martin Luther King, and there's so many other people, so many other heroes, so many other names that you don't know about that supported him, men, women, and children that, honestly, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. Because there was a time when, honestly, we couldn't be in the same room with people who I consider family. You guys, like our family, but there was a time when we wouldn't be family. We were slated to be enemies, which is a lie from the enemy. And so, eventually, we move into 2021. So President Joe Biden signed and made this day, Juneteenth, a federal holiday that's actually recognized by, the country on, banks, I guess, transactions or not, normal transactions and things like that. So we do have a way of remembering this day. And you will get more backstory as to what Juneteenth is.
Now we have a short video that better explains Juneteenth for you guys.